Manifest destiny, the belief that the United States was fated to stretch beyond its original borders, shaped many Americans in the mid-1800s. For some, it wasn't just an idea, it was a calling. Meet William Walker, a doctor-turned-lawyer-turned-newspaper editor. Driven by delusions of grandeur, he would spend his life relentlessly trying to conquer foreign nations in hopes of creating his own empire, nearly succeeding only to have reality and a firing squad bring his dreams crashing down. In his wake, he destabilized a nation, destroyed cities, and caused the deaths of thousands. Celebrated by some as a folk hero and condemned by others as a pirate or even a mass murderer, this is the story of William Walker, the grey-eyed man of destiny. History's most infamous figures, Part 5. William Walker was born on May 8, 1824, in Nashville, Tennessee, to James Walker, a Scottish immigrant, and Mary Norville, the daughter of a Revolutionary War officer and a family of veterans, politicians, and newspaper editors. William was a small, serious child, often described as delicate and shy, was extremely intelligent. At just 14, he graduated summa cum laude from the University of Nashville, and by 19, he earned a medical degree from the University of Pennsylvania. Walker then spent a few years in Europe, continuing his medical studies at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland and traveling around the continent. He returned to the United States in 1845, briefly practicing medicine before deciding it wasn't for him. Moving to New Orleans, he passed the bar and practiced law for a short time, before quitting and becoming co-owner and editor of the New Orleans Daily Crescent, briefly employing a young Walt Whitman. It was during this time Walker met and became engaged to Ellen Martin, but his happiness was cut short in 1848 when a cholera outbreak swept through New Orleans, killing thousands, including Ellen. Heartbroken, Walker left New Orleans for the promise of wealth in San Francisco during the gold rush. Unable to strike it rich, he became an editor for the San Francisco Herald. It was here that Walker first gained national attention. He criticized a local law clerk, William Hicks Graham, and his colleagues in the Herald, provoking Graham to challenge him to a duel. Walker accepted, but during the duel, he was shot in the leg, and Graham walked away unscathed. Despite his injuries, the duel brought Walker national attention. He was seen as a man who would not back down from a fight. It also spurred him toward another career change, one that he would forever be infamously linked to. In the mid-1800s, private citizens, spurred by manifest destiny, the belief that the United States was fated to expand beyond its original borders, mounted unauthorized military expeditions into foreign lands, a practice known as filibustering. By 1853, maybe it was the call of manifest destiny, the childhood tales of his relatives' battlefield glory, or the notoriety from his duel, likely some combination of all three, that finally drove William Walker to stake his claim and carve out his own territory. That summer, he traveled to Guaymas, Mexico, seeking a grant from the Mexican government to establish an independent colony in Baja, California, intended to fortify the frontier against Indian raids. Rebuffed and sent back to San Francisco, Walker refused to take no for an answer. Determined to create his Republic of Sonora, a territory south of California where slavery would be legalized, he pitched this idea to investors and sold scrips, redeemable for land in his proposed republic. On October 15th, Walker and 45 recruits set out to conquer Baja, California and Sonora. Despite their small numbers, Walker and his men were ferociously driven by the promise of land, glory and wealth. Fortunately for them, La Paz, the capital of Baja, California, was sparsely populated, allowing them to capture it with minimal resistance. On November 3rd, Walker proclaimed the area the Republic of Lower California, naming himself president and adopting Louisiana state law as the law of the land, making slavery legal. Soon after, he boldly declared his new land was part of a larger Republic of Sonora, despite not taking any land in Sonora. He projected a romanticized victory, but reality told a different story. Walker had less than 200 men, limited supplies, and faced both hostile locals and unrelenting desert conditions. Fearing retaliation from the Mexican military, Walker and his men retreated to Cabo San Lucas and then north to Ensenada. But within a few months, the Republic of Sonora crumbled against Mexican military counterattacks. Knowing he would be killed if captured, Walker retreated to the US and surrendered to US authorities, who arrested and charged him with violating neutrality laws. Walker stood trial in San Francisco, but after only deliberating for 8 minutes, a sympathetic jury found him not guilty. Far from being disgraced, Walker emerged with a swashbuckling reputation. Little did anyone know that some 3,000 miles away in Central America, an unexpected plea for help would give Walker a second shot at glory, one that would plunge the region into years of bloodshed and chaos, remembered today as the Filibuster War. While Walker was enjoying his legal victory, civil strife was brewing in Central America. Nicaragua was locked in a brutal civil war between its Democratic or Liberal Party in León and the Legitimist or Conservative Party in Granada. Desperate for an edge, Democratic President Francisco Castellón made the surprising move of recruiting the infamous Walker to come to Nicaragua with up to 300 colonists and help them defeat the Legitimists. Given a second chance at his dream, Walker seized the moment. On May 3rd, 1855, he and approximately 60 mercenaries, nicknamed the American Phalanx, left San Francisco for Nicaragua via New York. Landing in Nicaragua, Walker and his American phalanx were joined by 170 Nicaraguans and 100 Americans. With Castellón's approval, the 31-year-old Colonel Walker began his campaign against the Legitimists. Despite standing only 5'2" and having no formal military experience beyond his failed Sonora efforts, Walker reportedly possessed a captivating leadership style. His calm demeanor gave him an air of quiet authority, and his intense grey eyes gave rise to the nickname the Grey-Eyed Man of Destiny. His first attack on the Legitimist stronghold of Rivas was a flop, and the Legitimists quickly dismissed him as a threat. But after reorganizing, Walker decisively defeated them at the Battle of La Virgen on September 4th, 1855, and captured their capital Granada on October 13th, defeating the Legitimists. Following the victory, Patricio Rivas was named president, but he was merely Walker's puppet. Both armies were disbanded and reformed into the United Army of the Republic of Nicaragua, led by none other than General William Walker. Walker's victory shocked the Americas. In the US, he was hailed a hero, with newspapers calling him the Grey-Eyed Man of Destiny, and poems and plays were written about his exploits. However, Nicaragua's neighbors feared Walker or other filibusters trying to repeat Walker's success and take over their countries. Walker outwardly extended offerings of peace, but his goal was to conquer the rest of Central America. Despite the immense praise from back home, Walker would soon make a fatal mistake and draw the ire of one extremely powerful American citizen, Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was a wealthy shipping and railroad tycoon who controlled many of the transportation networks across the United States and the Americas, including Nicaragua's main rail and steamship routes. Encouraged by fellow filibuster Edmund Randolph, Walker seized these assets and sold them to Vanderbilt's rivals, Cornelius K. Garrison and Charles Morgan. Outraged, Vanderbilt sought revenge, appealing to US and British officials to restore his rightful ownership. When they refused to intervene, he sent his agent Sylvanus Spencer to Costa Rica to convince its government to retaliate against Walker. By February 1856, Costa Rican President Juan Rafael Mora, armed with Vanderbilt's support, declared war on Walker. Mora's army triumphed at the Battle of Santa Rosa and the Second Battle of Rivas, forcing Walker's forces to flee, while Costa Rican soldier Juan Santamaria heroically distinguished himself. Before Walker and his forces fled, he made the infamous decision to throw soldiers' corpses into the water wells, poisoning the water supply and causing a cholera outbreak in Costa Rica that killed over 10,000 people. After a disputed election in Nicaragua, Walker turned on Patricio Rivas and on July 12, 1856, declared himself president of Nicaragua. Now fully in charge, he aimed to shape the country in an Americanized Southern image, reintroducing slavery, making English the official language, and overhauling fiscal policies. That November, U.S. President Franklin Pierce even recognized Walker as the legitimate president of Nicaragua, providing a needed boost of legitimacy. However, This was a little too late, and within the year, Walker's rule in Nicaragua would come crashing down in flames. In response to Walker's actions, on July 18th, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala met in Guatemala City and signed a treaty of alliance that recognized Patricio Rivas as Nicaragua's legitimate president. Only Costa Rica was absent, but this was due to the devastating cholera outbreak Walker caused earlier that year. Back in Nicaragua, on September 12th, former Democratic and Legitimists, dissatisfied with Walker's rule, pledged their support to Patricio Rivas and declared war against Walker's regime. 2 days later, their Septentrion army won the Battle of San Jacinto, a day celebrated in Nicaragua to this day. By this time, Costa Rica had rejoined the fight and, with the help from Vanderbilt, seized all of Nicaragua's railways and steamships, cutting off Walker from reinforcements. On December 14th, 1856, a 4,000-strong coalition of Costa Ricans, Hondurans, Salvadorans, Guatemalans, and the Septentrion army surrounded Granada. Desperate, Walker fled the city but ordered one of his generals, Charles Frederick Henningsen, to burn Granada to the ground. For 2 weeks, Walker's men forced out residents, stole valuables, and systematically burnt the city to the ground. Granada, the oldest Spanish colonial city in Central America, was in ruins. Adding insult to injury, Walker's men left an inscription on the city's ruins, Aqui Fue Granada. Here was Granada. By spring 1857, Walker's forces retook Rivas, holding out against the coalition's encirclement. But as supplies ran low and morale fell, Walker knew this was the end. But before the coalition's forces could capture them, Walker was bailed out by the U.S. Navy. Commander Charles Henry Davis offered Walker and his men safe passage back to the United States, where they would be charged with breaking neutrality laws. On May 1st, Walker and his men agreed and surrendered themselves to the U.S. Navy, who escorted them back to the U.S. to stand trial. After nearly 10 months as president of Nicaragua and 2 years of warfare, William Walker left behind thousands of dead, cities in ruins, and a destabilized nation. When they arrived in New York, Walker wasn't treated like a criminal, he was treated as a returning hero. Crowds cheered for him from New York to New Orleans. More plays and poems were written about him and his exploits. Once again, Walker stood trial for violating U.S. neutrality laws, but just like last time, he was acquitted of all charges. Freed, he embarked on a southern tour, meeting President James Buchanan and raising funds for another expedition. 6 months after his acquittal, Walker attempted to return to Nicaragua. However, the U.S. Navy suspected he would try to recapture Nicaragua, and Commodore Hiram Paulding promptly arrested Walker when he arrived and escorted him back to New York to stand trial for a third time. Unsurprisingly, Walker was acquitted a third time, but in an ironic twist of fate, Paulding was reprimanded and relieved of command by President Buchanan. Following his acquittal, Walker published his memoir, War in Nicaragua, in 1860, recounting his tumultuous rule. He remained popular in the South, where his pro-slavery views resonated, but this alienated many in the North who considered him no more than a pirate. Around this time, British colonists in the Bay Islands of Honduras, hoping to break away from Honduran rule, invited Walker to help them form an independent colony. Believing the Bay Islands could be his new base for reclaiming Nicaragua, Walker and about 100 followers set sail. Little did he know it would be his final voyage. The British, learning of his plans, saw Walker as a direct threat to their strategic and commercial interests and dispatched the Royal Navy to intercept him. When Walker and his men arrived in Trujillo, they were surrounded by the British Royal Navy and were arrested by future Admiral of the Fleet, Noel Salmon. Instead of extraditing Walker to the United States, Salmon handed Walker and his chief of staff over to Honduran authorities, who quickly convened a military tribunal, charging Walker with piracy and filibusterism. In his defense, Walker argued that piracy can't be committed on land, and filibusterism isn't a word, so I can't be tried for something that doesn't exist. Despite his best efforts, Walker was sentenced to death. On September 12th, 1860, the 36-year-old William Walker was executed by a firing squad in Trujillo, Honduras. and buried there. William Walker, doctor, lawyer, newspaper editor, and filibuster, whose personal ambition became an entire region's nightmare. Praised in the American South and West as the gray-eyed man of destiny, he was reviled in the North and Central America as a criminal and pirate, bringing chaos and destruction for personal gain. His brief rule in Nicaragua, complete with reinstating slavery, wreaked havoc, yet forged heroes among the Central Americans who banded together to drive him out. In the end, William Walker's legacy is a cautionary tale of how personal ambition, fueled by twisted ideals, can captivate the masses and leave devastation in its wake. As always, don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button. Your support helps this channel grow, allowing us to bring you even more incredible stories. If you enjoyed this video, we release new episodes weekly, so click the bell icon so you never miss a future video. This is UnRecalled History. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.